Today we will be reviewing for the test. Here are the number of touchdowns thrown by Arizona Cardinals quarterback Kurt Warner for each game during the 2008 season. Make a dot plot of the data and describe the shape of the distribution. So if I draw my number line, I'm going to have 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I have 1, 3, So then it says, describe the shape of the distribution. Well, as you can see, it's roughly symmetric. And unimodal. Here are the number of stolen bases for each of the 30 Major League Baseball teams in 2010. Construct a relative frequency histogram to display this distribution of stolen bases and briefly describe the shape. So I went ahead and tallied up how many were in each category. I decided to count by tens, starting with 55 since it was the lowest number. And then this column is my relative frequency. So I took the frequency and divided by 30. So for 55 to 65, I have 13.3% or 0.133. Then I have 10% twice. I'm not the straightest line drawer, sorry about that. Then for 85 to 95, I have 20%. For 95 to 105, I'm back to 13.3%. For 105 to 115, I have 6.7%. For 115 to 125, I have 10%. For 125 to 135 and 135 to 145, I have 3.3%. I have nothing at all from 145 to 155. Then I go back to 6.7%. Then my last column is 3.3%. And it says, briefly describe the shape and distribution. So the shape would be skewed to the right. So if you draw your curve over, you can see how the tail goes to the right, and it's unimodal. There is a gap between 145 and 155, but that's okay because it doesn't keep going up after that. It goes up for one and then back down, so we don't count that. In 2010, quarterback Cam Newton of the Auburn Tigers won the Heisman Trophy as the best player in college football. He was a dual threat. He could beat teams with his passing or his running. Here are his total yards for each of his 13 regular season games. Calculate the mean and median of Newton's distribution of total yards. So you would add them all up and divide by 13, and I get that his mean is 307.54. His median is 303. His range would be 408 minus 206, which is 202 yards. His IQR would be 349, which is Q3, minus 254.5, which is 94.5. And then it asks if there are any outliers. So we'd have to calculate our lower and upper bounds. So my lower bound would be 254.5 minus 1.5 times 94.5, which is 112.75. And our upper bound would be 349 plus 1.5 times 94.5, which is 490.75. So the answer to that is that there are no outliers. And when it says justify, showing your work is sufficient. Create a box plot to summarize Newton's distribution of total yards. So what I need is my min, my Q1, my median, my Q3, and my max. So I can find all of that in my calculator. So I have 206, 254.5, 303, 349, and 408. Don't forget to label your axes. So I have 206, 254.5, 303, 349, and 408. And there is my box plot. The following box plots show the distribution of points per game for Boston Celtics guard Rajon Rondo during 3 different periods from 2009 to 2010. Briefly compare the results. So remember, we're going to use socks. So the first one is shape. So these are all a little different. The first one you could say roughly symmetric or slightly skewed right if you include the outlier. I'm going to say roughly symmetric. Second is skewed left. And playoffs are skewed right. Outliers. First has outliers. Center. Playoffs and second have roughly the same center. First is lower. And then finally for spread, I would say that first and playoffs have a larger spread, with first being slightly bigger. However, second has a larger IQR. During which time period did he have the highest percentage of games where he scored fewer than 10 points? So if I go back over here and make a line at 10, the highest percentage, even though it doesn't look like quite as much, would be in the second, because remember, this portion is 25% and this portion is probably 8%. So that would be 33% total. In the first half of the season, which was higher, his mean points per game or his median points per game? Remember, first half is roughly symmetric. If they're roughly symmetric, then the mean and median should be pretty equal.